Chapter 4, The Colonies Develop. Pretend it is the early 1700s and you have just arrived in one of America's larger port cities. After nearly a month of ocean travel, you are thrilled to see land. As you leave the ship, you wonder where you will live and how you will earn a living. Would you settle on a farm, or would you settle in a town? Will you choose to live where other people from your homeland live, or will you try to somewhere new? How would you make a living in your new country? Would it be the same as you made a living in your old country? Would that influence your choice of a career? Think about these things and the choices that the people who arrived in early America had to make. Chapter 4, Section 1, New England, Commerce and Religion. The main idea of this section is that fishing and trade contributed to the growth and prosperity of the New England colonies. Why that's important today is that the coastal cities in New England continue to engage in trade that helps them to make them continue to be prosperous. Key terms and places that will be defined for you through the Google Classroom: backcountry, subsistence farming, triangular trade, navigation acts, and finally, smuggling. One American story. Peleg Folger, a New England sailor, kept a journal that describes what whaling was like in the 1750s. In one entry, he explained what happened after whales were sighted and small boats were launched to pursue them. So we'd row about 1.5 miles from the ship, and then a whale come up under us and smashed in our boat and threw us every man overboard except one. And we all came up and got hold of the boat to her until the other boat, which was 1.5 miles off, came up and took us in, all safe and not one man hurt. Peleg Folger quoted in The Sea Hunters. Okay, now let's do our source analysis on this. So, SOAPS on our primary source. So, ask yourself, who was the speaker? Should be pretty easy. What was the occasion? Who is the audience? Intended audience. What was the purpose of the speaker? To entertain, inform, or persuade. And finally, the subject or the main idea. Remember, with occasion, by the way, it's not only when, but also where this took place. So take a minute, pause the video, and see if you can answer each of these questions for our primary source analysis. And I'll be right back. So you should know that the speaker was Peleg Folger, right? The occasion would have been in the 1750s in New England. The intended audience, it could have been a journal he was keeping, so he could have been the intended audience, or it could have been intentionally a historical record for posterity, so for future generations. His purpose, to entertain, inform, or persuade. This sounds to me like he's simply informing what it was like on the dangers of whale hunting and one particular adventure or whale hunt. And overall, the subject was what happened on this one particular whale hunt when a whale came up and flipped one of their whale boats and they had to wait to be rescued. So showing us how dangerous the occupation was of whaling, especially in New England. So when Folger and his mates killed a whale, they cut a hole in its head and removed large amounts of oil from the animal. When the ship returned to port, this oil was sold to colonists, who used it as fuel in their lamps. Many settlers in the New England colonies, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, made a living from the sea. The majority of New Englanders, however, were farmers. Distinct colonial regions developed. Between 1700 and 1750, the population of England's colonies in North America doubled and then doubled again. At the start of the century, the colonial population stood at about 257,000. By 1750, more than 1,170,000 settlers called the English colonies home. By the 1700s, the colonies formed three distinct regions. They were the New England region, the Middle Colonies, and the Southern Colonies. So the New England region, you can see, we're made up of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. The middle colonies, you should already know, were New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. The southern colonies consisted of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Another area was the backcountry. It ran along the Appalachian Mountains through the far western part of other regions. So here you have the area known as the backcountry, which was mostly wilderness, meaning it was not settled. Several factors made each colonial region distinct. Some of the most important were each region's climate, resources, and people. New England had long winters and rocky soil. English settlers made up the largest group in this region's population. The middle colonies had shorter winters and fertile soil. This region attracted immigrants from all over Europe. The southern colonies had a warm climate and good soil. There, some settlers used enslaved Africans to work their plantations. Finally, the backcountry's climate and resources varied depending on the latitude. Many Scots-Irish immigrants settled here. During the colonial era, the majority of people made their living by farming. However, the type of agriculture they practiced depended on the climate and resources in the region where they settled. The farms and towns of New England. Life in New England was not easy. The growing season was short and the soil was rocky. Most farmers practiced subsistence farming. That is, they produced just enough food for themselves and sometimes a little extra to trade in town. Most New England farmers lived near a town. This was because colonial officials usually did not sell scattered plots of land to individual farmers. Instead, they sold larger plots of land to groups of people, often the congregation of a Puritan church. A congregation then settled the town and divided the land among the members of its church. This pattern of settlement led New England towns to develop in a unique way. Usually, a cluster of farmhouses surrounded a green, a central square, where the meeting house was located and where public activities took place. Because people lived together in small towns, shopkeepers had enough customers to make a living. Also, if the townspeople needed a blacksmith or a carpenter, they could pool their money together and hire one. Harvesting the sea. New England's rocky soil made farming difficult. In contrast, the Atlantic Ocean offered many economic opportunities. In one story, a group of settlers was standing on a hill overlooking the Atlantic. One of them pointed out to the sea and exclaimed, "There is a great pasture where our children's grandchildren will go for bread." The settlers' prediction came true. Not far off New England's coast were some of the world's best fishing grounds. The Atlantic was filled with mackerel, halibut, cod, and many other types of fish. New England's forests provided everything needed to harvest these great pastures of fish. The wood cut from iron-hard oak trees made excellent ship hulls. 100-foot tall white pines were ideal for masts. Shipbuilders used about 2,500 trees just to produce one ship. New England's fish and timber are among its most valuable articles of trade. Coastal cities like Boston, Salem, New Haven, and Newport grew rich as a result of shipbuilding, fishing, and trade. This is the end of Chapter 4, Section 1, Part 1. Please make sure that you have completed all of your notes that accompany this video that you can fill in so far. And we will finish whatever you were not able to finish along those guided reading questions through the Google Doc. You'll finish them in the next video that is Chapter 4, Section 1, Part 2. And we will see you in class tomorrow.